Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Hey, so glad you're with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We're just about at the weekend, and boy, do we have some stories for you, and boy, is Jim Garrity ready to talk about them. So we didn't actually talk about how we're going to classify these, so let's just say, bad, crazy, and crazy. Maybe bad, crazies. No good martinis today, but let's start in New York City, where Donald Trump was, quote-unquote, sentenced for his 34 convictions in the Stormy Daniels hush money trial, that verdict coming down in late May. The prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, following Trump's victory in the election, wanting it on the record but no punishment. The Supreme Court last night rejecting Trump's appeal to not have the sentencing today. It was 5-4 with Roberts and Coney Barrett siding with the three liberals. So today, Merchan imposes the decision. That's Judge Juan Merchan. This is called an unconditional discharge, which means no jail time, no probation, no fines, and no penalties. But Trump is technically now a convicted felon, which you will hear Democrats and talking heads on the left using nonstop. And so just to refresh our memories on the case here, here's Jonathan Turley on Fox News today explaining why this case was frivolous and Judge Merchan was not a fair dealer in this whole thing.
You know, the fact is that this is not a criminal case in my view because there's no underlying crime. Bragg took a dead misdemeanor, zapped it back into life as this pile of felonies. He essentially tried a series of federal crimes that the Department of Justice rejected. And he was only able to do that by this enabling judge. And I was not nearly as harsh on Juan Merchan until I sat in his courtroom. I was quite shocked with his rulings. I thought that they were well outside the strike zone and showed a lot of bias. But now the good news is that this case can be appealed in whole, and those decisions can be reviewed.
And a lot of people think Trump will have at least a shot at getting this reversed on appeal. Jim, your friend, my friend, Andy McCarthy, pretty much sees the case the exact same way. He covered it for Fox News, basically saying that this was a case that never should have been brought. The statute of limitations was done on the misdemeanor. They conjured up the felony cases. But ultimately, it's Manhattan. And of course, most likely in a politically charged case, you're going to get the verdict you want there. And that's what Alvin Bragg got. Trump, for his part, with a scathing review on Truth Social, saying, I was given an unconditional discharge. That result alone proves that, as all legal scholars and experts have said, there's no case. There never was a case. And this whole scam fully deserves to be dismissed. The real jury, the American people, have spoken by re-electing me with an overwhelming mandate in one of the most consequential elections in history. As the American people have seen, this case had no crime, no damages, no proof, no facts, no law, only a highly conflicted judge, a star witness who is a disbarred, disgraced, serial perjurer, and that's Michael Cohen, and he worked for Trump for many, many years, and criminal election interference. Today's event was a despicable charade, and now that it's over, we will appeal this hoax, which has no merit, and restore the trust of Americans in our once great system of justice. And so, Jim, in the whole avalanche of legal cases filed against Trump over the past couple of years, this one seemed to be perhaps the flimsiest of all. And so, while I'm sure Merchan, prior to the election, was thinking he was going to be dropping a much bigger hammer here, the Democrats still get what they want, but ultimately it didn't stop Trump from getting elected. So he wins too, in a way.
So, Greg, I was actually debating this probably could be considered a good martini. I was originally thinking, well, it's over, although I guess with the appeals process, it's not really over. No jail time, no fine. Really, in the end, no consequences. Certainly no significant consequences for Donald Trump. And we're kind of left with this question of what was the whole point of this? Now, the further we get from Election Day, the more I start to think that, yeah, the campaign decisions had consequences, but you really look at this, the outcome of this election, probably a good portion of this cake was baked by like mid-2023. The state of the economy, high cost of living, inflation, situation at the border, and poor enforcement, the abuse of the asylum policies, chaos overseas. A lot of how the country felt about the performance of the incumbent party and Democrats and the consequences of Democratic Party policies were really well in there. But Early to mid-2023, Alvin Bragg brings the charges against Trump. It rallies Republicans around him, kind of blunts the momentum Ron DeSantis had. By the way, I think if you nominate Ron DeSantis against either Biden or Harris, I think we have this pretty much the same outcome. In the end, lawfare did not work. And I'm hoping that the lesson that enough Democrats take from this is that, that really backfired. That did not convince the public that Donald Trump was a bad guy. It convinced the public that we were out to get him by hook or by crook with any means possible. And Alvin Bragg, who I know was high-fiving and everybody thought was this, rising star and he's going to run for governor and all that stuff. If you're a Democrat who's angry about Donald Trump winning a second term, you should be really angry at Alvin Bragg, because the Jack Smith cases, now basically closed up shop and never to see the light of day, much more serious crimes, much more significant. You go to the most frothing at the mouth, angry Trump hater ask them to list the 100 worst things Donald Trump has ever done. They'll do it. Let them get out a sheet of paper. They'll write them down. I bet you falsifying the reason for the payments to Michael Cohen over an alleged affair with Stormy Daniels, that's not going to make the top 100. Nobody cares. Taking classified information to Mar-a-Lago? Okay, yeah, you can see the consequences for that one. January 6th? Yeah, you can see that one. In the end, to the average observer, it looks like the prosecutions against Trump went 0 for 4. Yes, technically with this one, he's a convicted felon, but in the end, none of them, have ended up with any jail time or any, significant fines or anything like that. And by the way, probably the lesson from Georgia is that if you're a district attorney and you intend upon prosecuting a former president of the United States, you probably shouldn't be stuffing your top investigator. That ends up looking really bad for the case you want to make against him. And so in the end, does lawfare work? The evidence base in this case is no, that it will backfire. That, now, maybe you do this against some other Republican figure or some other elected official in the future. Maybe it won't, but I think the attempt to use the legal system to punish someone who you think is a really terrible person, if you don't have a solid case, it's not going to turn out well for you. And so that, I think, is what makes it a good martini. This also is a very crazy martini in a lot of different ways, because we just went through this entire national ordeal, and in the end, the judge says, yeah, no real consequences. Never mind. Judge Emily Latella. Never mind.
Hey, let's talk about Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks is America's original butcher with more than 100 years of family-owned expertise in delivering the world's best steak experience. I can vouch for the Omaha Steaks. They're delicious. They are flavorful. They're good-sized portions. The burgers are excellent-sized portions as well. And now, the fan favorite filet mignon has earned the coveted distinction of USDA certified tender. But now you can also subscribe to Omaha Steaks. Do so at omahasteaks.com/3ml and get 12 free Omaha Steaks burgers in every shipment. Plus, you'll get an extra 10% off and free shipping for the rest of your subscription. So inflation-proof that pricing. Get your offer and your price locked in for the life of your subscription. Plus, there's tons of flexibility with this. You can skip a shipment, swap selections, change your frequency, or cancel anytime. Make life easier by subscribing to the best. Subscribe to Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com/3ml and get 12 free burgers and free shipping for the life of your subscription. Plus an extra 10% off today and on every subsequent subscription shipment. omahasteaks.com/3ml. All right, Jim, on to our second bad or first crazy, depending on how you look at it. We're back to the California wildfires. We've talked about it a lot over the last couple of days. You've written about it again in today's Morning Jolt and all the different policy issues that unfortunately weren't properly addressed prior to this horrific fire. I mean, you just look at the images out of Pacific Palisades. We're not talking about, a few homes. We're talking about entire neighborhoods just gone. And now the politicians, of course, are taking some heat. As Ron DeSantis pointed out at Mar-a-Lago last night, if Gavin Newsom were a Republican or Karen Bass was a Republican, they'd be getting a lot more heat from the national press and beyond. Yesterday, though, Gavin Newsom on site, confronted by a very frustrated resident who lost their home, also talking about losing the high school there. And so this is the first part of this encounter. Some are saying Gavin Newsom did the best he could given the emotional tone of the situation. I think he's trying to just blow this resident off, but you be the judge.
Governor, you got a second? Governor, I live here, Governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
I'm sorry. There's literally, I've tried 5 times. That's why I'm walking around to make the call.
Why is the president not taking your call?
Because it's not going through. So
Why?
I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now.
So then he did offer his sympathies for all that she's lost. But apparently Gavin Newsom went to the Joe Biden School of Literally because he wasn't literally on the phone. I doubt he literally had just tried 5 times to get him. He was simply trying to say, I need to do something with the phone here, so please go away. I don't know how much of a political price he's going to pay. I'm sure he's got 2028 ambitions. That's a long way away. Might not even be thinking about that right now. But given the policy issues that you write about today and his just general reaction so far to this crisis in front of cameras, not impressive.
Yeah. So today's Morning Jolt continues to coverage of the devastating fires out there in Los Angeles County. And the use of the term apocalyptic is accurate. There are scenes there that look like there's something out of Independence Day or something. Just whole neighborhoods just devastated. Nothing but charred remains. 10 dead, I believe up to 10,000 structures either burned to the ground or seriously damaged. I think we're now in several 100,000 in the, been told either to evacuate or recommended evacuation. This is the worst disaster in Los Angeles history. And, as I lay out, Santa Ana winds, dry conditions, there were atmospheric factors that put this beyond the realm of any, state, local, or federal government policy to prevent. But these policy decisions can either mitigate the effects of a fire or they can exacerbate the effects of the fire. And I walked through a bunch of them today. Most notably, controlled burns. Most notably, clearing out the brush. Los Angeles County does have a program designed to clear out the brush on these high hills. I think you can say now, considering the consequences of that, like almost this apocalyptic destruction of a large swaths of the city, that it wasn't prioritized enough and not enough resources were put into it. A lot of discussion about the type of brush that they have growing on these hillsides. Basically, they're perfect kindling for forest fires once they start. So you've got that. You've got the fact that in 2014, the state, this is probably what's most relevant to the state government. 2014, California voters authorized more than $2 billion in a referendum to build more reservoirs. This is what Trump was talking about, I believe, in the Joe Rogan part. That was 10 years ago. None of them have been built by yet. I went through the most recent updates on the state websites of the California Water Commission of when they're supposed to be done. A bunch of them, the earliest one I think is 2028, and a bunch of them are in the mid to late 2030s. Now, as I point out, when the people making the sequel to Blade Runner wanted this super far off date for the sequel, this apocalyptic future, they picked 2049. The last reservoir will have been operating for 14 years on that far off sci-fi date. So this has been tied up in red tape for the better part of a decade, and they're not going to be finished for the better part of a decade to come. All right, now, utterly unacceptable. The state needs a lot of water. Now, there's discussion about whether the lack of reservoirs and the lack of water supply is why they didn't have water coming out of the hydrants. A lot of them are saying, well, actually, no, it's just a matter of having that much use across the city is going to lead to a loss in water pressure. But anyway, it's like the state should have a lot more water at its disposal than it has right now. And this inability to build things on time, or even within a reasonable time frame, is a major factor in that. The fires were not caused by failed blue state policies, but they were considerably exacerbated by that. And if you've just seen not just your house, not just your neighborhood, but chunks of the city burned to the ground, you have every right to say to your state government and your local, where have you been? There's no bigger, I don't mean literally in the case of Karen Bass. I mean, where have you, this is your job. All this other stuff that the state does, diversity initiatives and feel good. Here's our art display. No. Protecting people's lives and property is job one. Where have you been? So this woman, really sticks it to Newsom. And it got me, wondering today, Greg. This is where if you thought I was ranting before, brace yourselves. What's Gavin Newsom good at? There are certain people. I can see why Democrats love Barack Obama. Barack Obama is, charisma personified. He's a fabulous speaker, even if you don't agree with anything he says. Newsom, as my colleague Jeff Blahar points out, he looks like a villain from RoboCop. He always looks like, with that slicked back hair, I will get you, RoboCop, and OCP will control this city. Way back in the 2018 Democratic gubernatorial primary, he was running against former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villagrosa, as well as some other candidates. And I went back and I checked it, and I found it. It was a Sacramento Bee columnist, Marcos Breton, who wrote this great question about the privileged candidate. Why do we let Gavin Newsom get away with this? And he points out, if one of Newsom's opponents were bankrolled by one of the richest men in California for most of their lives, as Newsom has been by oil heir Gordon Getty, they would be answering for it every day on the campaign trail. One of these other candidates having a rich white sugar daddy greasing the skids for them at every critical turn of their adult lives would be viewed with suspicion. That's what Newsom had with Getty. So it's kind of fascinating. Here is this embodiment of, never mind, he's not just straight, he's a womanizer. He banged the wife of his chief of staff.
And best friend.
Best friend, right? Self-described best friend. If those are your friends, God help save you from your enemies. Elite, wealthy, privileged, straight white male in the most diversity-obsessed political party possible. In San Francisco, he pledged they were going to eliminate homeless in 10 years. Homelessness got worse, right? Nothing in San Francisco got better. And somehow he wins the gubernatorial nomination. And he's been there twice. What is he good at? What in California has gotten better on his watch? I don't think you can answer that. And so this is something I've been covering politics my entire adult life, and I like to think that I understand it much. The fact that Gavin Newsom, we talk about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz and these other people who are really lousy at their jobs, how Gavin Newsom keeps falling upward. This guy shouldn't have a cult of personality in Democratic Party politics, and it doesn't really make sense. So that is what I'm just going to, I'd like to think that the piss poor planning at the local and state levels would, drive a stake into the heart of the Gavin Newsom 2028 talk. But I don't know if it will. But it's just one of those things where, how much worse does it have to get, Los Angelinos, before you look at the state, before you look at Mayor Bass and you say, these policies have failed us, and we need something different, and we need something better.
Isn't he, or wasn't he, somehow related by marriage to Nancy Pelosi, too? And so he's kind of on her pet list, kind of like Adam Schiff. And so if Nancy loves you in California politics, you're going to get an easier path forward, although having millions of dollars from the Gettys is pretty good, too.
The next, Pelosi didn't know anybody better? Didn't know anybody smarter? How, who were the competition? Who were the other folks who had to do the choice to be the metaphorical favorite son?
Yeah, it's just absolutely infuriating. But you know that a few months from now that he's going to be, loved by the media again, and this is all going to be forgotten once they move on to a bigger story. But the voters, I don't know about the voters. The voters are going to remember this. I
know. Kathleen Blanco did not come back after Hurricane Katrina. I do kind of wonder if we are seeing something on that scale. If not the destruction, then the devastation of a great American city. That, is this entirely because of bad policies? No, but it's greatly exacerbated by them.
Let's talk about something way better than that, and that's the opportunity for your business to get going this year better than it ever has because of your decision to get NetSuite by Oracle and have it take care of those things that need to be taken care of, but frees you up to do what you do best. More than 38,000 businesses have future-proofed their operations with NetSuite by Oracle. It's the leading cloud ERP platform. It integrates key business functions like accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one seamless system.
Gain real-time insights and forecasting to make proactive, data-driven decisions. With actionable data at your fingertips, you can anticipate trends and respond faster to opportunities. And closing your books in days instead of weeks means you spend less time on the past and more time focusing on the future. That lets you shift your attention to the strategic initiatives that will drive your business ahead.
Small business experts will tell you, you got to use these tools. They are going to make your life easier. You have to take care of these things. Let NetSuite by Oracle do that. Also, download the CFO's Guide to AI and Machine Learning at netsuite.com/martini. The guide is free to you. Again, at netsuite.com/martini. That's netsuite.com/martini. Let's continue talking about the LA fires here in our crazy martini. And one of the things that we've heard a lot over the last few days is this is what happens when DEI becomes the most important policy. You judge people by their performance. Can they do the job? Are they qualified for the job? And when the chips are down, do they do the job well? Well, we know that the LA Fire Department is doing the very best they can right now. Resources are frustratingly slim in some ways. Getting water when it's needed most has been a difficult challenge. But also, there's been this focus on DEI, on diversity in the department over the past couple of years. And it kind of came to a head yesterday when this video featuring Los Angeles Fire Department Assistant Chief Christine Larson came out, which included this particular excerpt.
You want to see somebody that responds to your house, your emergency, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, that looks like you. It gives that person a little bit more ease, knowing that somebody might understand their situation better. Is she strong enough to do this? Or you couldn't carry my husband out of a fire, which my response is, he got himself in the wrong place if I have to carry him out of a fire.
No, that's the wrong response. It's not your job to give out quick one-liners if somebody's trapped in a fire. However they got there, it's your job to get them out. So that's the type of thing that almost makes you think that they're proud that they're focusing on things other than how to have the most effective department possible. So we've heard, residents from James Woods on down talk about how the firefighters they've dealt with have been as professional as possible. When you see this focus coming out of the department over time, it's maddening, especially if you lost your entire world.
Yeah, we should, before we get any further, we should note everything we have heard, everything we've read, all accounts are that the men and women of the Los Angeles County Fire Department and Los Angeles City Fire Department are performing their duties, not with professionalism, courage, grit, and determination, everything you want to see. It's the management that we're starting to have some questions about. And this comment by Christine Larson that, you want to see somebody who looks like you. God forbid there's a fire right now here in my home office, or there's one at the Radio America studios, Greg. I think we'd be really happy to see anybody. But also, don't firefighters often show up with masks? Yes. So you can't really tell. Wait, hold on. You look vaguely Northern European, but you might be Belgian. And we're really looking for only Irish American and Greek American firefighters right now. We're gonna have to just follow the 21 and 23andMe or whatever. We need a full genealogy before. What, are you kidding me? This is just absolutely absurd. The idea of I only want to be rescued by black firefighters, or I only want to be rescued by Hispanic. No, don't care. Whoever can do the job, get him in there. And that comment about if your husband's in a spot, you're in a spot. What, do you think fire victims choose where they are when the fire breaks out? What's really terrifying about this is this idea that not just that she said it. Well, she thought it. That's bad. She said it. That's second bad. Third, she said this on camera. Then someone putting together promotional materials for the Los Angeles City Fire Department puts this out there and thought this was good. Thought this was something worth sharing instead of wow, you don't want to say that and you really don't want to say that on camera. No one rebuked her. No one said that's really not the attitude. If you're in this job in which your job is to protect the public, you really don't want to say anything. It's like, nah, kind of sucks to be you. You really shouldn't end up in that spot. What do you expect me to do about it? I'm just a firefighter, right? If you're a firefighter and the job is likely to involve needing to drag somebody out of some dangerous situation. So you better have that upper body strength to do it. Are there women who can do the job? I almost certainly. This is a really unnerving comment to hear from somebody. Obviously, it takes a crisis for this to come to light. Second thing, and this is laid out in today's Morning Jolt. I don't know if the Los Angeles City Fire Department, Kristen Crowley, has done anything else to evaluate on her performance so far. I will note that in a memo dated December 4th this past year to the Los Angeles City Fire Board, she said that the Los Angeles City Fire Department is, quote, facing unprecedented operational challenges due to the elimination of critical civilian positions and a $7 million reduction in the overtime variable staffing hours. She goes on to say these staffing hours this reduction in the staffing hours have severely limited the department's capacity to prepare for, train for, and respond to large-scale emergencies, including wildfires. Now, somebody might say, every city department, whenever there's any potential threat to their, any reduction in their budget, they're going to scream their heads off and they're going to say it's really, really bad. Apparently, this amounted to a 2% cut. That's not a particularly big cut, but nonetheless, in a crisis, in a circumstance like this, any resource that you might have had earlier feels like a big deal right now. And while this, the question would be, why is the city let its fiscal health get to a point where it feels it needs to cut fire services, particularly heading into wildfire season? And then, what have you been spending all this money on? Because it's going to be we held an arts and crafts fair or anything like that. It's going to look really. I believe the diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator made something like $399,000 a year. There's $400,000 right there. You could probably fill up that gap with pretty good. Again, Karen Bass's absence from the city during the most severe crisis in its history, bearing down on them. It's nice to go to the inauguration of the president of Ghana. I know Karen Bass, when she was in Congress, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, traveled to Ghana. That's all nice, but when you're mayor, you have a day job. Your day job is to run the city government and protect the rights and lives of your citizens. You might, and doing that job might mean you might just say, you know what, I can't go to Ghana. This is just or, first of all, you should be paying attention to the National Weather Service warnings. Let's say you blow off them for the first 2 days about, hey, we're going to have, some of the most intense Santa Ana winds we've ever seen. You're flying there. And then at some point, somebody on your staff says, Madam Mayor, this is looking really bad. If she had, landed in Ghana and said, I got to get back, and tried to fly back commercially or something like that, she'd be getting a lot less grief right now. It's not, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Okay, that can happen. It's staying through the inauguration as the warnings are getting more and more dire is what makes this absolutely unforgivable. I understand if the city council and everybody else in the city has got much bigger problems to deal with right now, but based on this, Karen Bass should not be the mayor anymore, because she didn't do her job when it was most required and chose to stick around in Ghana, of all places. This is a reflective of a blue state, blue city governance where they mix up their wants and their needs. The needs have been neglected too long. And now hundreds of thousands of innocent people are paying the price for that.
And this whole episode has brought back Adam Carolla's story about how he applied to be a firefighter. And according to him, it took 7 years to get contacted because apparently white males were not exactly at the top of their priority list. And if you're trying to get the best and the brightest, there really shouldn't be parameters like that are put into place. You're kneecapping yourself. So,
Greg, 7 years isn't that long. You can't even build a water reservoir in that kind of time. You need at least 30 years to do that.
Unbelievable. Well, let's hope we got better news come Monday. Jim, see you then. Have a good weekend.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They do help us out a lot. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific weekend. Join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.